Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, the country owes you a great deal of gratitude, but I only have 5 minutes, so I'm just going to say thank you for all that you've done for us. And, Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here today. We're talking about policy and strategy in the Middle East. And one thing that I find a little disconcerting from people I talk to is when we find individuals who have held your job in the past as Secretary of Defense who indicate, rightly or wrongly, that the President's heart may not always be in some of our military operations. It's also disconcerting when we hear the President, rightly or wrongly, suggest that we may have no winning strategy in the Middle East. But it's also disconcerting as a committee. We're not always in the policy and strategy business, but we're in the resourcing and capability business here. And we look at just some of the gaps we have. We know that we're going to have a gap this year for our carriers, where we will have certain regions of the world that will not have a carrier presence for weeks when we perhaps need one or two. We also know that in 2007, the Navy was able to meet 90% of our COCOM validated requirements. This year, we'll only meet 44%. We've had testimony from the Air Force that they currently have the oldest and the smallest Air Force since the history of the Air Force, and that less than 50% of their combat squadrons are fully combat capable. So this committee, on a very bipartisan basis, has worked very, very hard to try to close some of those gaps, to reach some of the numbers that you need. We voted out an NDAA bill, 269 to 151. This committee voted it out 60 to 2. We have passed a defense appropriations bill, 278 to 149. By all likelihood, it looks like a conference report will come out, and those bills will be before the President in September of this year. You probably know we have 12 appropriations bills. The first one up before the President will probably be the defense bills, and the President will have 11 days to sign them. Now, you were kind enough on an unsolicited basis the last time you were here to suggest to us what your recommendation would be to the President about vetoing bills. Now that you actually have a real bill to look at and to analyze, which helps fill some of those gaps, can you tell us whether or not you would recommend that the President veto that bill if it's substantially the same bill that has passed on a bipartisan basis out of the House, both on the NDAA and the approach bill?
Thank you, Congressman. And let me just second what you said about the chairman. He's been my battle buddy now for a number of years, as I had various jobs, and he was chairman, before that Chief of Staff of the Army, and I'm very much going to miss him. It's been terrific. You're absolutely right about resources. We cannot continue to be the world's finest fighting force if we don't get a budget, a budget picture and horizon in front of us. I haven't changed my view from last time I saw you. I really fervently hope, and this isn't something I'm skilled in, and I won't be part of the deliberations within the Congress, but I fervently hope that everybody can come together, both parties.
Mr. Secretary, I don't want to cut you off. I just have a minute and some left. Here's my point. We don't always get to pick the bills we hope that we can have. I'm saying if a bill comes substantially the same as the NDAA bill and the defense approach bill that passed the House, would you recommend to the President that he sign that bill or that he veto that bill?
The President's already said that he's going to veto the bill.
No, I'm asking your recommendation because you gave us a recommendation.
I support that.
So you would recommend that he veto those bills?
He has already determined that he's going to veto.
But you would recommend that?
I want.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you done an analysis of the risk that would put to national defense? Because the result of that would be that you'd get at least $25 billion less.
Let me describe the risk that going 1 year at a time in budgeting.
No, I'm just asking the difference
I know what you're asking, but I would like
so you're not prepared to ask that.
A sort of herky-jerky approach to our budget is. It's managerially harmful to do things.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you will have $25 billion short if that bill fails, but you would still take that risk. And by the way, that risk would put us, according to General Dempsey, at a place where we would be below the minimum edge of what we need for our national security. And let me just end up, Mr. Chairman, by saying this. I think it is unimaginable that we would send 450 troops into harm's way and still look their families in the eye and tell them and their families we'd veto a bill that would get them the resources they need. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Time of the gentleman's expired. Ms. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reiterate that I haven't changed my view. Multi-year defense budget. We have a strategy that is a long-term strategy. We have people, the very people that Congressman Forbes just referred to, who have careers, who want to know what their future is going to be. And this business where we have a budget 1 year at a time, and I'm not blaming anybody for it. I realize it's a collective thing where our country needs to rise up and get it together in this area. I'm just telling you, it's very damaging to the institution that I feel responsible for and am responsible for. And the other thing I'd say is I travel around the world, and this looks terrible. It gives the appearance that we are diminishing ourselves because we can't come together behind a budget year in and year out. And so I continue to hope and believe that we can come together behind an agreed budget that has a multi-year horizon and allows us to plan and execute programs and recruit and retain people in the way that I think we need to do.